The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Marriage equality has passed the Delaware House by a 23-18 vote. 21 votes were needed for passage. 5 Democrats broke ranks. The bill heads to the state Senate. Now, the governor there, Jack Markell, has expressed support for the bill. He told the Huffington Post back in the middle of the month that he is behind advocates' efforts in favor of marriage equality. Now, in addition to this, the Rhode Island Senate approved legislation on Wednesday to establish full marriage equality for same-sex couples with a 26-12 vote. That bill is going to go back to the House for a procedural vote to accept the Senate's version. Then it has to be signed into law by the governor. And the governor, Lincoln Chafee, has expressed support for marriage equality legislation. This is big on a couple of levels, Lewis. Number one, 2 more states. Accelerating rate of marriage equality legalization. That's big, that's good, and that's important.
Right.
Number 2, New England will be complete. We will have an entire region of the country where, regardless of whether you were born gay, straight, lesbian, bisexual, whatever, you're respected like everyone else, at least when it comes to legally in terms of who you can marry. And that's a big deal to say, you know what, Lewis, we have this whole section of the country where it's almost like its own country in some senses. And it's something people have alluded to for a long time. It's kind of like we have a couple of countries in the U.S. as it is. And really now on a map, you are starting to see, as we see on a lot of issues, sections being colored in. And I think that this is important.
Red and blue, right?
In some sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Natan, what do you think the significance is now of saying New England has legalized marriage equality?
It's huge because before, when you had just Massachusetts after 2004, people could just say, well, it was done by judicial activism and it's just, a crazy liberal state. But then you had a few more states. This last election cycle, you had the first time where via public referendum, states legalized gay marriage. So now you have an entire region where you can't just single out one state. You have New Hampshire, a libertarian type state. You have Rhode Island, a Catholic sort of slightly religious state or more religious. You have the whole gamut within New England, and now a whole region of the country has it. So it's kind of, unstoppable at this point that it's going to spread everywhere.
Yeah, to quote Joe Biden, this is a big effing deal.
It sends a message. I mean, how that message is interpreted is
that's
a
another
completely
story.
different matter.
Yeah. So as of April of 2013, according to Freedom to Marry, 9 states have passed laws legalizing same-sex marriage: Connecticut, Iowa, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, Washington, and Vermont. And like I mentioned, we are very close to adding Rhode Island and Delaware. And of course, there's also Washington, D.C. So we're going to keep an eye on that, and we will see how quickly this continues to happen. There is a story that, piggybacking on the story of marriage equality, is a very disturbing story. A physical education teacher named Carla Hale has been fired from the Ohio Catholic school Bishop Watterson High School, where she taught for 19 years for being gay. She's 57 years old, worked there for 19 years. She says that school officials handed her a letter from an anonymous parent who had clipped Hale's mother's obituary. So let's explain what happened here. The teacher's mother passed away, and in the obituary, it mentioned Hale's name, Carla Hale, as a daughter who survives the mother who has been deceased. And it mentions the name of the teacher's domestic partner. And the parents were angry that, wait a second, how could this woman be allowed to teach at the school? She was fired less than a month ago. Her dismissal notice explicitly referred to the same-sex relationship as the basis for her termination. It was revealed in an obituary for your mother who passed away that you have a domestic partner, and we now are firing you. Now, there's a contract between the Roman Catholic Diocese of Columbus, Ohio, and the Central Ohio Association of Catholic Educators, which actually says that teachers can be fired on the grounds of immorality or serious unethical conduct. And when I hear that, I say, oh, well, wait a second. 2 Catholic organizations agree with each other that it's okay to fire people for being gay. I guess that's all we need to know, Lewis. Case closed.
Yeah.
We can move on, right?
Very funny.
But the point here is that what is the violation here, right? The school found that Hale is in violation of policy 45116 .1, Lewis. Do not confuse this with 45116.3.
Does this list start at 0?
That's a that's a good question, actually.
Yeah.
How long is this list? And what does 45116.1 say? It says that Catholic school personnel will set an example for moral behavior, upholding the rules of the Catholic faith. Of course, the Catholic faith officially does not support homosexual lifestyles, as they call them. And it teaches that people who feel they are attracted to those of the same sex must never, ever, ever act on those feelings. Now, the problem here, and this is a good thing, we'll see where this goes, is that there's a city ordinance in Columbus which says, doesn't matter what the Catholic Church says, doesn't matter if these two Catholic groups have agreed with each other that you can fire gay people, it is illegal in Columbus to fire anyone on the basis of sexual orientation. In fact, it goes beyond that. It's illegal to discriminate in any way, even not firing, but giving someone less money, less salary, simply because they are gay. However, not everybody is upset about this. Brian Fisher likes it. He says it is discrimination, and sometimes discrimination is good. Here's what Brian Fisher had to say about the firing.
Now, my point here is the school discriminated against this teacher. Yes, they absolutely did, and they should have. They were absolutely right to do it. Mm-hmm. There are times when discriminating is the right thing to do, when discrimination is the right thing to do. They were discriminating against this woman's sexual behavior, sexual misconduct, immoral sexual behavior, and we should make no apologies for discriminating against that kind of behavior. You know, we discriminate against shoplifters. My point is we discriminate against immoral behavior.
Right. So the same way that shoplifting is discriminated against, we should be discriminating against people who are gay. Now, this is obviously nonsense. And not only is it nonsense because it is discrimination, it is against the law in Columbus, Ohio. That's going to be resolved by the law. But it's also, of course, hypocritical. And we have these epic double standards. Catholic school teachers can be terminated if they get a divorce. Are they getting terminated for having divorces? Not all sins are being equally punished here. This is the typical double standard that we're used to. And you just can't fire people for being gay and say, you know, my holy book says that it's okay, right? That's you just can't do it.
We just have to hope that in Columbus, the state and city law will trump the law of the diocese.
Yes, which really is not law.
Right.
It's nothing.
So I'm assuming it will.
We have to assume
But
it
if
will.
it doesn't, we've got a big problem on our hands.
We do, and we're going to follow this story. The Liberty Council's Matt Barber is talking about Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And Matt Barber is a fascinating guy. I've been reviewing a lot of his, I hesitate to really call it material, but I guess that is what it is. I've been reviewing a lot of his material, and this is an interesting comment he made lately. He said that the homosexualization of the military is leading to a Marxist persecution. Let's listen to what Matt Barber had to say.
If you have a hate group, if you have an extremist group, you can't associate with them if you're part of the military. Yeah. You know, and this is just absurd what's happening in under this administration, and it comes really from the top, because this administration could put a stop to it. They could say, this is ridiculous. Every branch that has done this needs to apologize. They need to back off. They need to disassociate with the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yeah, it's frightening. It's Marxist in its application. They're simply trying. It's politically motivated. Again, trying to marginalize people with whom they disagree. General Boykin has decried publicly what has happened to his military. And you know, Matt, we warned of this type of activity leading up to the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the homosexualization of the United States military. And a big part of the issue in this email was talking about how these groups are anti-gay. These are anti-gay hate groups.
Right. So the military has been homosexualized, which is an interesting word. Linguistically, there's a lot to analyze there.
Does that mean if you join the military, you're gay?
I'm not sure what it means, but the military has been homosexualized. And, of course, he was against the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And regardless of what General Boykin has said and how he may be misinterpreting that, nothing happened when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. Maybe that's the homosexualization he's talking about. We fought it as much as we could because we're bigots, and then nothing happened. And now it's been homosexualized, and every single study points to nothing negative happening as a result.
Also, I believe now that the majority of high-ranking military officials are saying that it really is making no difference.
Of course.
And he's basically just picking one of the 2 or 3 people who are saying the contrary.
Even if we take the fact that we should listen to what generals say, the consensus is that nothing negative has happened. And let's also take it a step further. The military was not homosexualized, to continue using this term, when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. There were always gays in the military. It's just that now they can admit to being gay. That seems to be, I think, Natan, the biggest misunderstanding when we hear all of the anti-Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal propaganda.
Yeah, and I think also what's behind this is it's sort of like a logical consistency with their idea that homosexuality is a lifestyle choice, in the same way for them that, getting tattoos or playing video games or something is a choice that if people are around other people who are like that, they're going to be drawn into doing the same thing. They think that if you have openly gay people in the military, they're going to turn other people gay.
Right. Yeah, that's there's a long list of nonsense associated with a lot of these. I hate to even use the term theories, but ideas.
Yeah.
Former Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich intern Adam Savader. I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced. He's 21 years old. He's been arrested for using nude pictures to blackmail 15 women. Raw Story has a write-up about this. He's a former intern of Mitt Romney, also worked on the political campaigns of Newt Gingrich and Paul Ryan. He was arrested this week over an alleged sexual extortion scheme where he stalked 15 different women from 3 states over the last year or so. And the New York Daily News said that he was a political science major at SUNY Farmingdale. He had worked on a number of campaigns, like I told you, and he claimed to have nude pictures of women and would threaten to release those pictures unless the women sent him more. He demanded one woman answer a series of personal questions relating to sexual preferences and positions, according to the FBI complaint. And he also told 2 women, he notified them, that he was masturbating to their stolen pictures. I'm sure they were thrilled to hear that. He allegedly told one woman, "I swear on all that is holy." Oh, he's a religious guy. Well, that's good. At least he's a man of God. He swears on all that is holy that if you F with him again, he will send the pictures to their parents. I have no problem sending these to your parents, friends, and sorority sisters unless you cooperate by answering me. Some of the victims were from the same high school, according to the complaint. One of them said, I can't take this. I'm going to contact the police department. She did. The police department referred this to the FBI, and he was using a Google Voice line to keep his identity secret, but the FBI was able to track his IP address and then figure out who was doing this. And they arrested him at his home in New York, charged with internet extortion and cyber stalking, and he faces up to 5 years in prison if convicted. My question is, what about Benghazi? What happened to those talking points on Benghazi? And people are asking about nude pictures, but what happened to Benghazi?
This would be such a better story if for some reason Paul Ryan was in on this.
Hey, you know what? These are the binders full of women Mitt Romney was talking about. It was this kid
It was a giant sexual extortion scheme.
Literally, this kid had a binder full of women's pictures, which he was then using to extort people. I guess Mitt Romney was telling the truth.
So it's a good thing Mitt didn't care about those binders, right?
Yeah, I guess not.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I wonder if it's even true. If you're going to go to, if someone came to me, right, and they said, listen, I've got nude pictures of you, and I'm going to release them if you don't send me more, I know that there aren't nude pictures of me floating around. So in other words, I wouldn't fall for it because I know there aren't nude pictures. It appears that at least some of these 15 women, it was believable to them that there were nude pictures of them, which is one of the most also compelling aspects of the case.
Right. I mean, if you target enough women, eventually you will find one who is aware that there are nude pictures of her out there.
Exactly. So maybe it was just a numbers game for her. Interesting. So we'll follow what the sentence eventually is. And like I said, up to 5 years in prison if convicted. On today's bonus show, we will talk about an insane story involving a Baltimore prison, inmates impregnating prison guards, and buying them expensive vehicles, all while in prison. It's an unbelievable story out of Baltimore. We'll also talk about Coachella Music Festival, and we'll talk about a town billing President Obama after he did a fundraising visit. How do you get the bonus show? You go to davidpakman.com/membership and become a member. You can also check out our Indiegogo campaign. Go to our website, davidpakman.com, and click on the bright green banner at the top of the page. Only 6 days left. We need your contributions today. Read all about what we're doing. Check it out. We'll take a break and be back after this. A lot more still I want to talk to you about today, so I'm glad you're with us.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show membership program. Are we back, Natan? I would love to know what's going on. It seems like Natan fell asleep at the switch there. You okay back there, Natan?
We're all set.
Yeah. The David Pakman Show membership program, made possible in part by liberalbias.com. Cutting-edge research shows that Obama causes lightning, cats, and suicide. Find out more unbiased research like that at liberalbias.com. Today's new member of the day is Thomas Graylin. Thomas, thank you for becoming a David Pakman Show member. You clearly understand the importance of alternative, non-corporate, progressive, independent, Lewis co-hosted media, and you are doing your part to support that by being a David Pakman Show member.
I like that a little addition there. Yeah.
Rush Limbaugh has likened Trayvon Martin to Zahar Tsarnaev and Osama bin Laden, basically making the case that the media, in the same way that Limbaugh alleges was trying to soften the image of Trayvon Martin, is doing the same with Zahar Tsarnaev by putting pictures of him when he was younger than he is now up. Let's listen to it straight from Rush Limbaugh, and then we will react to that.
Also, that the news media are doing to Dzhokhar what they did to Trayvon Martin. They're regularly showing a photo of Dzhokhar that was taken when he was about 14. Soft, angelic, nice little boy, harmless, cute, big, lovable eyes. Not at all what he looks like today. The way, whenever we're shown Osama bin Laden, it's in his shepherd pose with his walking stick, walking through the mountains or wherever.
Yeah.
But the news media seem to be making him look like an innocent little angel.
So let's stop it right there. There's really a lot to analyze here. First of all, he says that the picture, is portraying him as this soft, angelic, nice little boy. And that's similar to what was going on with Trayvon Martin. The comparison with Trayvon Martin is absurd, since Trayvon Martin was the victim and Zahar is the self-confessed perpetrator. But this is really the goal here, right? Which is to say Trayvon Martin is the perpetrator. And in that sense, we can make an analysis that compares how he is being handled to how Zahar is being handled, although that analysis itself is superfluous.
I mean, on top of that, the media commentary does not reflect what he's talking about in the pictures. I mean, those are the pictures they have.
These are the pictures that, what other picture we've seen? I don't know, 10 pictures of each of the two brothers, and these are the pictures that they have. I don't know what other pictures
because these are the pictures that people take of them. I mean, presumably nobody took pictures of them, stabbing people or testing a bomb. Yeah.
Secondly, when was Osama bin Laden ever portrayed as a meek shepherd, like Rush Limbaugh describes? Did I miss something over the last 10 years? Bin Laden images always have looked pretty sinister to me.
Yeah, and I mean, when he's, walking around with a stick or whatever, I mean, we're talking about a guy who didn't get around too well. He had renal failure and, whatever.
The main point I draw from this, Natan, is that the number one thing here is just about making Trayvon Martin more of a criminal than anything else.
Yeah, it seems like he's comparing a guy who worked with his brother to make pressure cooker bombs. They killed 4 people and injured over 170 to a kid who went out for Skittles.
Yeah, that's
I don't know
essentially
that this is necessarily the best comparison to make.
No, I don't know that it is. New Hampshire State Representative Stella Tremblay In an effort to not be partisan, I'm not going to tell you whether she's a Republican or a Democrat. I think you'll probably be able to figure it out from the story. New Hampshire State Representative Stella Tremblay claims that the Boston bombing was a government conspiracy. Interesting. What is it that she's cooked up here? She posted on Glenn Beck's Facebook page, just as you said would happen. Top down, bottom up. Boston Marathon was a black ops terrorist attack. One suspect killed, the other one will be too before they even have a chance to speak. That's already been proven false. Drones and now terrorist attacks by our own government. Sad day, but a wake-up call to all of us. First there was a suspect, then there wasn't. InfoWars broke the story, and they knew they had been found out. Now, she has a long history of weird claims. Back in October, she sent Secretary of State Bill Gardner and the State House a link to the video Not Natural Born, Truth Matters, which was reported by HuffingtonPost.com, and she sent it unaware that it was a parody of a birther video. In other words, she tried to report President Obama not being a citizen or whatever the theory was by, as evidence, presenting a video that was a parody. That's one weird thing she did. She also, just a couple of months ago, said that Woodrow Wilson, because he was a sympathizer and he believed in the Aryan race, believed Hitler was correct in the races, where our founding fathers believed that all men were created equal. I can't understand any of this. This is just, this woman seems to be deeply troubled.
It's almost not even worth reporting on.
If she's making this kind of wild statement, I would say you should be providing proof and documentation. The impetus is on you as the conspiracy theorist, as I mentioned yesterday, to prove what is going on.
Unfortunately, as we know, there are going to be people who just take everything she says and take it very literally.
The story specifically, you're right, is nonsense. But I think the main point here, the takeaway, is that there are a lot of similarities between Democrats and Republicans. If you haven't yet figured out which party this woman is from, then I don't know. Maybe you don't pay attention to politics. But I understand that members of both parties are, broadly speaking, kind of beholden to the banksters and the huge financial companies that more or less control the direction of many aspects of our society and the campaign finance system we have. I get all that stuff. But how has the Republican Party become such a breeding ground for this level of absurdity? This is an incredible level.
You have to wonder if a lot of these people even believe it, or if they're just trying to get attention and make the Obama administration seem like this terrible big brother government.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the source really there is. Ann Coulter suggested that Tamerlan's wife, who we talked about yesterday, Catherine Russell, Ann Coulter says Catherine Russell should be arrested for wearing a headscarf, and also wondered if she had a clitorectomy. Does she understand even the least bit about what that even is and how that happens? I don't know. Here's just a few seconds of video of Ann Coulter making a brilliant analysis.
About this wife as well. One thing that's been sort of confusing in the reporting, they say that he married her in 2010. I believe to be true, but they keep saying he hit her or his girlfriend a year ago. Right. It turns out, which the father, by the way, defended as, according to the New York Times, quote, he only lightly hit her. Point two, the person he hit was another girlfriend while he was married to her. I don't care if she knew about this. She ought to be in prison for wearing a hijab. This immigration policy of us assimilating immigrants into our culture isn't really working. No, they're assimilating us into their culture. Did she get a clitorectomy too?
Right. That's the big question, Lewis. That I love that Ann Coulter, as being an incisive reporter, did Catherine Russell get a clitorectomy, which of course is not voluntary. It's forced on children in tribal African villages. Why Catherine Russell, as part of converting to Islam a few years ago, would have procured a clitorectomy, I have no idea. But she's asking all the right questions and making brilliant points.
She's doing what she does best.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wasn't our country founded, by the way, on religious freedoms? Isn't the wife an American citizen? I mean, don't a lot of women and men convert to different religions when they marry their spouses? Or maybe it was religious freedom for Christians and soon-to-be Christians that really is the concern of people like Ann Coulter.
That is it.
Fox News' Eric Bolling says that George W. Bush kept us safe from 9/12/01 until the Obama administration took over. Take a look at this video. This is Eric Bolling on Fox News.
Look, I over the years I've been fairly tough on George. I think it's he's a great president, a great person, great family.
Right.
I don't necessarily agree with some of the things he did, some of the Medicare Part D stuff, the auto bailouts, some of the spending initiative. But I will tell you one thing.
Right, the only
from
good thing.
9/12/01 till the time President Obama raised his right hand, January of 09, the man kept us safe. And and you certainly can't.
From the day after I decided it would be inconvenient to start keeping track, he's kept us safe. And of course, that's not even really true, because if we actually look, let's put up on the screen, Etan, our list here. So again, he kept us safe other than 9/11. Well, we had the DC sniper terrorist shootings. We had the anthrax attacks. We had the shoe bomber, which did fail, but it was certainly a pretty close call. And again, Lewis, remember, what about Benghazi? 12 embassy and consulate attacks under George W. Bush. There's also a long list of other stuff, which it's almost like not even mentioned, like the Tacoma, Washington abortion clinic bombing, which, hey, you know what? I mean, they were doing abortions, and maybe it's okay to bomb them. The attack at Los Angeles airport against an El Al ticket counter, the Seattle Jewish Federation shooting. There's a lot of these, right? But this idea from Eric Bolling, first of all, when is it common to start considering what a president did from just a specific day, right? Like why do we now not say, well, what happened during his presidency?
Yeah, what happened the day before this?
It's
the
like
biggest
saying,
terror attack that ever happened on U.S. soil.
Well, other than that, did you enjoy the play, Mrs. Lincoln? Was it a good play? I mean, I guess other than the fact that happened, did you like it? Was it well acted? That's basically what Eric Bolling is doing here.
Right. I mean, we've heard a lot of information that this was perhaps, that 9/11 was perhaps a huge failure on behalf of the administration and our intelligence. So,
yeah. But that doesn't count. We count how safe we were from 9/12 on.
I don't think that's fair.
Facebook.com/David Pakman Show. We are so close to 20,000 Facebook likes. I hope to see you on there. We will take a break. Dennis Campbell is up next. Thanks for being with us on this Thursday.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to The David Pakman Show.
Dennis Campbell is editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine, also host of Worldview Show on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/Worldview Show. Dennis, since the 2012 election, we've been observing truly a shifting tide against social conservative values on a number of different issues here in the U.S. Whether it will be widespread enough to change elections remains to be seen. It looks like now in the UK, we also have an upcoming referendum, which may serve as an indicator of whether the UK is also moving away from some of those conservative values. What's going on with that?
Well, the basic difference between the UK and the US is that we have 5-year terms as opposed to the 4-year terms for the Parliament, or actually 2-year terms for members of the representatives of the House of Representatives. So coming up by May of 2015, I think it's set for the 5th or something of May, there will be an election in this country if something major doesn't happen and Parliament is dissolved sooner than that. So what you're beginning to see now is the initial stages of the election campaign beginning to take shape.
So do we see, what evidence can we look at that might suggest that the positions of the Tories are falling out of favor?
Well, we've had a worldwide almost condemnation of austerity, and that's been the biggest Tory policy. How do we cut out of the government as much as we possibly can, which is very similar to what you see with the Republican Party there in the States. And what they try to do is privatize as many services as they can along the way. Now, they've had quite a bit of resistance in doing so, but they still have managed to, pack on so much austerity and so many cuts that we narrowly, and that's the big headline here in the UK, narrowly averted a triple-dip recession over the last month here in the United Kingdom.
So can you sum up? So, for example, I think a lot of people here in the U.S. assume that the UK is just overall very, very liberal or progressive by American standards. Could you give us a sense? So austerity is a good, although it affects a lot of social issues, it's an economic type of issue. On issues of equality, discrimination, social services, etc., can you hit a few points for us to give us a sense of kind of what the consensus, what the polling tells us about the broader UK population?
Well, absolutely. The biggest issue that's on the table right now are reforms, put that in quotations, to the National Health Service, which is our crown jewel of healthcare. It's the one that pretty much everybody in the world looks towards. And, this is the biggest problem we've seen. They are, again, privatizing a lot of the services at the GP level. Now, the GP is the general practitioner. That's your house doctor, your family doctor. That's the person to whom you go where most of your records are stored, but that's sort of like the first entry point into the system. So if you have an illness, unless it's very acute and life-threatening, you go to your GP. What they've done is they've privatized all of these GPs into very large groups in an effort to, quote unquote, again, cut costs. But what we're seeing now is that a lot of people are making a lot of money, just as you see with attempts with Obamacare to streamline services. Those that are there, the beneficiaries of those streamlined services, make a lot of money. And a lot of people are seeing longer waiting times, longer queues at accident and emergency rooms, casualty centers. So it's really beginning to take effect here, and people are not liking it one bit.
So let's focus on that healthcare thing. So here in the U.S., for example, we have, as you know, of course, a for-profit healthcare system. It's employer-based in most cases. Massachusetts has put together this alternative to that's been in place here. And then we have Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, which will put in some more of these government-organized systems people can buy into. And on the public opinion side, when you ask people fairly, do you believe the government has a responsibility to provide some basic level of health care to everybody? You get about 2/3 to 70% saying, yes, I believe that's the case. And we know because of lobbying and other influence why single payer is not really on the table. You've just told us about in the UK some of the privatization that's been going on. Now compare it to broader public opinion of what people would like.
Well, they absolutely want the NHS to remain as it is, which is a single payer, open system. You don't have any forms. You don't have any of the costs that you have associated with healthcare there. It's all taken care of under the system. What we're seeing happening now is that it's becoming very subtly a two-tier system, so that if you have a supplemental private insurance, that private insurance can help you get to the front of the line, no matter where that line is. And what the worry is that, of course, that for those who don't have, a lot of the resources are going to be diverted away to those who can pay for services. And indeed, some of these GP surgeries are so backlogged and they have so much demand, but not enough service providers, that they're beginning to say, well, look, if you want to pay for some of these services, some of the more common services, maybe a flu jab or some of the other things, they'll do those for a fee. And this is sort of the slippery slope that everybody is very much afraid of here, that we would now go into a completely privatized system and do away with the National Health Service we've come to know.
Do we know, Dennis, do we know what percentage of people in the UK have a supplementary private insurance?
It's very low. It's very low. And it's typically an employer-offered benefit or something that individuals pay for on their own. I pay for a supplemental service, as a member of a journalist union. We get slightly reduced rates, but it's still a hefty bill each month. But I like having the security and the knowledge of knowing that if an issue comes up, we can get to treatment and not have to wait for 3 or 4 months on some of these waiting lists, and we know that we'd get right to the front of the line because we do have that.
So that's interesting. So even though, of course, you've been a strong advocate of the national health system, you still believe that the situation is such that because you can afford it, it's worth having this supplemental for you.
For me, it is. I mean, and other people do feel that way. It's not universally felt. I mean, I have to tell you that if you have an acute situation you go right to the head of the line. You're well taken care of by the National Health Service. But for the elective situations, a situation recently with my youngest daughter that we felt needed a bit more immediate attention than the 4-month wait we would have, we were able to, inside of 2 weeks, get an appointment. That cost me £150, about $225 out of my pocket, but it was worth it at the time to solve the issue that was presenting itself.
Right. I mean, it's interesting because even with private insurance, the insurance we have here in the U.S., it still took me 4 months just to get an eye exam, a standard eye exam. It still took 4 months, and that was after calling around to 5 different doctors. So that's interesting because a lot of people criticize, well, look, it takes 4 months there if you have the government plan, so to speak, but it can take 4 months here with a private plan too.
Well, and do understand that we have a different priority here. It's a relatively polite society. So you're not going to see a lot of people banging on the table or banging on the counter saying, "Take care of me now, damn it," which is, I see a lot of that in the United States. What I tend to see here is that people expect a reasonable wait to occur when you have situations. So if you and they don't mind if they know that, if they say the waiting list is 4 months long, that in 4 months you're going to have an appointment, you're going to have it taken care of. So for most people, it's like, okay, I can wait because it's not that acute. I have to tell you, when my retina detached 6 years ago, I knocked 2 people off of the surgery for that day because my eyesight was at stake. And that's the way the system works. And most people don't complain. They say, hey, we've had an emergency case come in. We've tried our best. You'll have to come back tomorrow or the next day for your surgery. Most people are okay with that.
All right, Dennis Campbell, it's going to be interesting to watch what happens. We will definitely be following up with you. And give us a sense of what's coming up today on Worldview.
Well, we have an amazing guest coming in, the author of the book Salt, Sugar, Fat, Michael Moss, the New York Times investigative journalist, will be joining us. And we also have tomorrow night a woman here, Dr. West Marland, who has run rape crisis centers. We're going to be looking at the Indian rape crisis from the perspective not just of what can we do to help women, but how can we teach men not to rape? So I'm looking forward to both of those interviews very much.
YouTube.com/Worldview Show to subscribe free. Dennis, thank you as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
Have a good weekend, guys.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Thanks for being with us today. Of course, thank you also to everybody watching from the I Love It When I Wake Up in the Morning and Barack Obama is President Facebook page and the Too Informed to Vote Republican Facebook page. Interesting study written about in The Atlantic about how parents around the world describe their children. And when you look at it, there's some significant differences in terms of when you ask parents in the U.S. versus in other countries how they would describe their kids, what the priorities seem to be. So in Spain, for example, some of the most common terms were easy, happy. In Netherlands, happy, long attention, attention-seeking. In Italy, easy, well-balanced, even-tempered. In Australia, happy, intelligent. In Sweden, happy. And in the U.S., intelligence. Intelligence kept coming up a lot when parents were asked to describe their kids. Now, this is interesting for a number of reasons. The American parents were the only ones that regularly and consistently mentioned their child's intellect, where in other countries, the focus when you kind of described your children seemed to be happiness or being easygoing, easy to manage, or being well-balanced, like I said, in Italy, for example. What do you think this indicates? Does this say more about cultural attitudes towards intelligence and about cultural attitudes towards boasting about your children? Or does it say more about the parenting style? It's not really clear.
Boasting is a very common thing in the United States, I believe. I mean, could it also be that perhaps in these other countries, people pay more attention to the actual happiness of their children?
Well, that's the thing. I can't ascertain whether these results reflect what it is that parents are interested in putting out there about their kids, or what it is parents think is important about their kids, right, Natan? And that's a distinction that's important here.
Yeah, it's hard to say that this study shows that American children are less happy than they are in Spain or Italy, just because it could be that here parents are have more anxiety publicly.
Oh, totally. No. Let me back up. I'm not saying this is reflective of children being more or less happy or more or less intelligent. This is only about the attitudes the parents have when talking about their children.
Right. And to the extent that it is about the attitudes, it could be that it does signify that in the United States, parents are anxious about comparing their children to other, children in terms of their intelligence, while in other countries, it's about attention or happiness.
Interesting. Lewis, if you accidentally had a kid, right? We've kind of run through this scenario before.
Yeah, a few times.
You've made clear that in all likelihood, even if it was an accident, you'd probably love the kid. If you were asked, what would you most want to be able to say, right? Like, what would make you, if you have a 3-year-old kid, accident, but you love it, what would be your focus in describing your kid?
Well, I mean, I would really have no control over the intelligence of my child, right? I mean, sure, you can teach your kid as much as you can, read to your kid a lot, promote any sort of mental, what's the word?
Development?
Activity, development.
Balance, yeah.
Balance. But, of course, overall, the only thing that would matter to me is my kid happy?
Happy or well-balanced?
Well, I mean, don't the two kind of fit together?
Yeah, they're probably related.
Yeah.
In any case, interesting study. I think we could probably have a much longer conversation about what this means about parenting around the world. Let's go to some voicemails. 219-2-DAVID-P is our voicemail number. Here's a voicemail from the Eggman about the Rick Santorum speech needing permission slips for kids to hear it.
Hi, guys. I have a comment for you regarding the Rick Santorum speaking to the School of Kids. When I was in Hebrew school, we went on a field trip to see Jerry Falwell speak. I know there were a lot of schools there because the first 20 rows or so were filled with school kids to act as like a buffer between the protesters and Jerry Falwell. And I just remember people screaming, throwing eggs at the man, chanting, racist, sexist, anti-gay, Jerry Falwell, go away. After that day, I actually might have become a liberal. I might have started doubting God, and I might have become who I was because I saw this just racist, up asshole using God as a crutch to hate and discriminate against other people. When I was a kid, I saw Jerry Falwell, and it made me a better person.
All right, so this is an interesting point. Maybe kids would see the Santorum speech, and then it would push them away from that ideology because they would recognize how absurd it is. But we can't count on that. The indoctrination powers of people like Rick Santorum are not to be ignored.
And what if there were no protesters at the Santorum speech?
Exactly. Absolutely. No question about it. And here is a comment about churches being anti-gay.
Hey, David. This is Ryan Berkman. I just listened to your Monday show and heard you actually concede a point to the homophobic so-called chaplain about the quote-unquote church and its support for marriage discrimination. After you sort of conceded that to him, but that's not exactly true. A lot of mainline Protestant churches, the Lutheran Church, the Episcopal Church, Presbyterian churches have all actually come out in favor of gay people being fully accepted in the church, even marriage equality and things.
It's true. It's a good point. There are some churches, and maybe it's wrong for me to kind of proceed with this in spite of churches being against marriage equality, whatever. Maybe my arguments need to be actually, even within churches now, there is a lot of debate about what the right way forward is, and some churches are going the way of equality. Maybe I need to revise kind of my premise for having those kinds of conversations.
That's true. Depending on, like you said, depending on the churches. I'm sure there's a lot of turmoil even within those churches.
Right.
But
internally, yeah.
But that's a good thing.
It's a very good thing to have that now we actually don't even have just, well, the church is anti-gay, but we've got this other stuff. We can actually start to include the church in the equality argument.
Right.
DavidPakman.com/membership. We're mostly funded by individual memberships. Support strong independent media by becoming a member. You get tons of great benefits, including the bonus show, which is hosted by producer Lewis, an archive of programming. And right now, this week, our members are able to buy all David Pakman Show gear at our cost with free shipping for members only. That's a big, big deal. Sign up today, and we'll see you back here Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.